band started in the summer of 2007. Brandon Good and I were still in high school in local bands. We were in a local band that broke up, and we were just ready to start something different, more metal, technical, something that wasn't very common in our scene at the time. Our local scene was more like Alexis on Fire, Boys Night Out, stuff like that, which is music that I still love to this day, and I know Brandon still does as well. And we wanted to retain some of the aspects from that music and apply it to a metal sort of sound. All clean vocals on top of metal was one of the big things that we wanted to have. So the next thing in line was just to find a singer that could do it, which was very rare at the time because nobody in our local scene caught our interest.
The first time I met Nick, I believe he was 15. It was at a guitar center. There were about 15 kids around this one kid playing at an amp. So I started to walk up and I just noticed like this really awkwardly poised kid shredding the intro to BT Bam's Alaska. And we introduced ourselves and talked for a bit, but then after that we really did not talk for a while until we ended up in the same circle of friends, just between different local bands that I was friends with and a local band that he had played in. And eventually we just ended up like all partying together all the time. And that lasted for about 2 or 3 months until Nick and Brandon told me that they were forming a band. And I said, hey, I think I can sing. And I made them both come back to my apartment and watch a video of me singing with another friend of mine's band on stage, and Brandon was not having it. He was very polite about it, but it took some finagling for me to actually get in the band. One night, Nick came over to my apartment. We stayed up until like 5 in the morning on my balcony writing Ornaments Are For Hanging. After we wrote Ornaments Are For Hanging, we demoed it out on Brandon's MacBook and started kind of covertly shopping it to an all-star league of local band members, I guess you would call it. We ended up with a drummer named Jay. Not many people know about him because he only lasted like 4 or 5 shows. But we also acquired a guitarist that Brandon and Nick had known through school for quite some time, and that's how Zach came to be in the band. We played our first 4 or 5 shows with that lineup until we ended up having to let Jay go as a drummer, and that's how Paul came into play. And that's pretty much how it was for the rest of the time.
First show with I Am Abomination was a really great night. It was probably the first show that I ever played that was actually sold out. It was us and a couple of our local band friends at the time. We were through a Christmas show, and it was really, really fun, a great night, despite the fact that I had mono and I'm nearly dead on stage. There's a video online of me begging for water because I had mono so bad. After our first show, we were all pretty pumped up. We were jacked. We were ready to tour, record, we were to play as many shows as we could. We did play as many shows as we could. We played our local venue probably about 6 days
Constantly,
a week.
like 4 shows a week sometimes, and that was kind of a lot for us at that time because we were very much so a local band. And that went on for some time, not very long, because we tend to move rather quickly as a band. But one day we were at practice, and Nick brought up recording and told us that he had found a guy that was within a drive for us that he felt could really make the record that we wanted to make with us.
I've always been interested in recording. I was a member of a forum at the time when a guy named Joey Sturgis was starting to be recognized as a guy who could make a $20,000 record out of a $200 pop.
And I remember at the time he was recording like every big band in the scene that we are now a part of, I guess, like Devil Wears Prada, Before Their Eyes, and just bands like that. So we scoped it out and finally decided that we were going to make our first record with Joey.
recording Jaw Dropper was a pretty cool experience for me. I was very young, 16, still in school. I got to take a week off to go record a record in a garage in Indiana, which was probably like the best thing that we could have done at that time. We were so excited. Working with Joey was great. A lot of his techniques were completely unorthodox at the time, but now pretty much have become the standard of any kind of metal genre recording.
Recording Jaw Dropper for me was a very surreal experience, just due to the fact that before I joined this band, I had never been in a band before. I mean, I had done high school band and like orchestra and stuff like that, but I'd never really gotten into what it was that went into being a band. So it finally came time to release Jaw Dropper, and I remember this was still when MySpace was the most heavily used means to get your music out there. And at the time, we had a decent internet presence. Tons of kids were waiting for our stuff to come out, and I remember the first day we posted it, we got like 12,000 plays, and I just thought that that was absolutely absurd. I had no idea that we would end up with that much exposure just off of a self-released EP. With the release of Jaw Dropper also came the opportunity to tour, and it was something that we had always thought about. We were very much so that band that just dreamt of tour. Since the first time we practiced, we were constantly talking about wanting to tour.
The first few tours we did as a band were very fun, yet very hard. I remember playing in a basement of a bar in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we were playing in a bar that had a septic leak, an inch of just mystery liquid on the floor. Yet we were happy to be playing still. We were living the dream. That continued on. We were touring tirelessly until, I guess I had the wrong impression of what a touring member of a band actually did. I had the wrong impression from the start, I guess, and eventually it just wore too hard on me, and started thinking of different ways to support myself as a person, my future. I needed to make something for myself that I knew was concrete and something not as risky as trying to make it on a touring band.
I remember being at practice one day, and Nick told us that he wanted to talk to us. So we all sat down, and he just dropped the bomb on us. He said, "I don't want to tour anymore. I'd like to start moving towards a more concrete profession, but I'd still like to be in the band. Joey has offered me some opportunities to come and kind of fly under his wing, and I think it'd be a very smart decision for me to take him up on that offer." So that was pretty much that, and it was pretty crippling news to us at the time, being that we still had tours currently booked that we did not want to miss. So we immediately started looking for a touring guitarist. The first guy we found was a guy named Nick Poberski. He was awesome. He ended up touring with us for about a year. And then we moved on to another touring guitarist named Sean Reed, who also toured with us for about a year. And that's just pretty much how we functioned as a band on tour. In terms of everything else, Nick was very much so still in the band. He still wrote the music. He still helped us make every decision pertaining to the band. He just wasn't physically on tour with us because he was trying to focus on something that was, I wouldn't say a little more realistic, but a little more reliable in terms of a career. So after touring for I think a year or a year and a half, we started getting all this label attention out of nowhere. We were doing showcase after showcase and talking to label owner after label owner, exchanging emails, just back and forth all the time. And generally, the response from them was, "You guys are writing awesome music, and I really dig what you're doing. I just don't know how I would market you because you don't look like all the other dudes in all the other bands."
First showcase we did was for Victory, and I remember it vividly because this was the time that I realized that we were going to have a lot of trouble in this industry from this point on. We went to Chicago, set our things up in a room with no people. 3 guys walk in, and they just basically watch you play your set. So we're going at it, and then I saw fourth guy come in, which I'm assuming is, label owner, Top Shot, takes a couple steps in the door, pans the stage, looks at us, turns around, walks away. That I immediately knew that he didn't like what he saw as opposed to listening. There's no way he could have had a judgment of our sound from the 3 seconds that he was standing in the door. So, I mean, right then and there, I knew we were going to have trouble for the rest of our career.
So, at the initial response to every single one of those replies was always like very frustrating, because we didn't recognize the need to look like every other band, and we didn't understand just yet as to why they wanted us that way. And it was just, I just remember being extremely frustrated at the fact that the music wasn't the focal point of every talk we had with almost every single label. Sometime into the long touring cycle of Jaw Dropper, we had a manager at the time that put us into contact with the owner of Ferret Music. We had exchanged emails quite a bit and had some phone conversations that resulted in him offering us a deal. And for us at the time, it was really something different, because this was the first time that someone had said, yes, it doesn't matter what you look like. You guys are writing awesome music, and I have faith in that. So just follow me, and I won't steer you guys wrong, which was really awesome, because literally every label executive we had talked to at the time had such a huge concern with image that just left us really frustrated. So it was awesome and refreshing to have this person express so much faith in the music that we were making. And that resulted in us signing to Ferret, which in turn ended up turning into Good Fight Music. And that's when they sent us off to record To Our Forefathers.
To Our Forefathers was a completely different recording experience than Jaw Dropper. I had demoed all the songs. We basically had a month to write them, so I locked myself in Brandon's basement for a month and wrote 10, 11 songs for the CD and had them all demoed out. And at that time, Joey and I had developed a friendly relationship, and we would talk all the time, so we had everything planned out the way we were going to do it. We had 17 days to track a full-length record. It was going to be hectic, but I mean, we got it done, and it came out great, and I'm still proud of the record. I will be forever.
Touring off of To Our Forefathers was actually really awesome. We were already on tour supporting Jaw Dropper when To Our Forefathers came out, and we saw an immediate reaction, an immediate difference in what touring was like. More kids were starting to come out, kids were actually knowing our lyrics, we were getting better tour offers with bigger bands, and it was just awesome. And that lasted for about 3 months until we just hit this bad niche where we weren't making enough money to even get from show to show, and touring was just becoming increasingly difficult. And it's something that every band goes through. It's just we had been going through it for 3 years already, and 3 of our members just got really frustrated with the situation and decided that this isn't what they wanted to do anymore, and we respected that, but it pretty much left us in no position to tour.
After all the other members decided to leave the band, it was just Phil and I, and we wanted to keep it going. We obviously couldn't be touring with the 2 members. At that point, we just didn't have the resources to make it happen. And there was still the issue of a record being owed to our label, so we decided to just go for it and record a record. And that's how Passion of the Heist came to be. Passion of the Heist was a concept album, our rendition of the modern day biblical story. We had brought Brandon Gooden, our former bass player. He'd always been the one to write the lyrics. He helped us develop the concept and wrote the lyrics for that EP, and that's my favorite piece of work we've ever released, because the concept in itself is just very, very cool. Make a great movie.
After we recorded Passion of the Heist, we were officially free of contract, which is a really awkward situation to be in as a band, because you spend so much of your career's adolescence trying to get signed and trying to make someone have faith in your music enough so to sign you to their label, and then you just end up contract free and you're relieved. You feel good about it, and it's odd to think about. So after that happened, Nick and I sat down and decided that we were still going to release music and that we were still going to be a band. And that's how Hangin' On came into play. Releasing Hangin' On was a very humbling experience for us. By the time we had released it, I thought that the interest was just so far gone that the song was going to flop. And luckily enough, I was very wrong. It ended up being our most successful song, and the reaction to it from kids was really awesome. So from there, Nick and I just decided that we were going to continue being a band and continue to make music, and ultimately that led to making the decision to record another full length.
Doing the record by ourselves has been a lot less stressful than our previous releases. We weren't under a time constraint at the studio. We weren't worried about losing studio time or getting the album out on a certain day. We had no deadlines. We were able to set our own, so we got to take more time to write the CD, and I think it shows in the final product, and I think our fans will agree as well.
The title of this album is Let the Future Tell the Truth. And for me, personally, I think one of the main focuses after it gets released is that we do get back on tour. We have one planned. I can't announce it. I can't say dates or cities or times or anything like that. But we will be back on tour, and it's going to be awesome.